And this is Arturo Elizondo from Clara Foods, and Jasmin Hume from Shiru, and Ben Berman from Nomu. So thanks all for coming today, and we're going to sit down and have a little bit of a chat about, what does it say, the future of food. So even before we get started and with the speakers introducing themselves, I'd like to find out if anyone understands what we're going to be talking about, because we're actually taking a really new approach to how food is grown and how food is made. So first I'm going to ask, has anyone had like alternative meats like the Beyond Burger or yeah, almost everyone's had that. Has anyone had like an Impossible Burger? Like, okay, it's a different version of that. And has anyone tried anything? So that's basically plant-based meat, sometimes with a little bit of specialty protein. That's fermented protein that makes it more meat-like. Then there's a next level down, which is precision fermentation. Has anyone tried any things like Perfect Day ice creams? There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Wow. Okay, that's very good. You guys are very advanced. And that actually takes the animal out of the agriculture completely, but still has the same proteins. And we'll describe a little bit of what that is. So you're still having cow milk. It's just no cow was involved in the making of the milk or the ice cream. And then has anyone ever tried? Really, this is not even commercially available yet, but cellular agriculture and things like Memphis Meats or Upside Foods, as they're called right now, where the meat itself is grown in fillets, but no grain is attached to the meat. So it's like cow meat or chicken. Oh, we got one there. So there's a couple of people here who are going really into the future. Well, we are redefining what a sustainable planet looks like, and the panelists that we have today with us here are people who are making that redefinition of how we grow a food, how we make it without having an over-reliance on animal, industrial animal farming, which is, as people are probably aware of, that's you've maybe seen some movies or heard some reports, but it's one of the great causes of global warming is the methane that's being produced by the cows and the other animals and all of the other sort of agriculture that's used to feed animals, which we then feed, which is just very, sometimes 30 times worse for the environment than actually just growing the food directly in bioreactors. So we're going to find out about that future by talking to some of the leaders in the industry. But I first like to just, because it's such a unusual thing, I'm just going to set a little bit more context. SOSV, I'm an investor. We invest in a lot of these companies that are in this space, like some of the companies we've mentioned there. But one of the things that I had growing up is I had a mom who's a diabetic. And I don't know if anyone knows anybody who's a diabetic. You inject insulin into your arms. Well, it used to be the only way that you could get insulin was to slaughter pigs and cows, take the pancreas out, and then drain it out of the insulin. But then Genentech came along for pharmaceutical purposes, and they figured out, hey, we can actually take the human gene, which produces human insulin, which is better than cow insulin or pig insulin anyway, and we can grow it as a pharmaceutical and sell it in a little bottle. And guess what? Fewer people died of all the contamination problems. It's a much better fit for human beings, and life was improved, but only for pharmaceuticals and really, really high value proteins like insulin. What's happened in the intervening years is this incredible, technological revolution. These guys are leading that takes that process, which was once used only for pharmaceutical products, and there's other pharmaceutical products like human growth hormone or Viagra or all these other things that are grown that way, high expense. But they're making it now available by growing it like in vats and fermentation, just like beer is fermented. but where the output instead of beer, or the output instead of human insulin, is now commodity food products. That's a lot of what these teams here today are doing, is precision fermentation and getting the direct output, those hero proteins that we rely on for our ice creams, or that used to require animals. And with that background, I'm sure I've confused many of you, but hopefully enlightened some. We're going to talk to some of the leaders in this industry. Arturo, do you want to tell us a brief rundown on what you do at Clara Foods?
Yeah, happy to. Hi, everyone. So I run Clara Foods, founded the company almost 7 years ago. We've been in R&D for the last 6.5 years. And what we do is we make real animal protein without using a single animal. And we focus that specifically around in the B2B world, in large part because there's this massive gap in the industry around companies like the Kellogg's, General Mills, Walmarts of the world, trying to ride this transition of animal-free alternative protein products, in large part because of companies like Beyond and like Impossible and like Just, who've really helped educate the market. And so there's this massive gap in the infrastructure to help enable the world's largest food companies to transition. And so that's really where we at Clara operate. So we're a B2B alternative animal protein platform, and we produce different kinds of animal proteins using yeast and fermenters. So in the same way that brewers use yeast to convert sugar into alcohol to make beer and wine, the yeast that we work with naturally converts that same sugar into protein. So we can engineer the yeast itself to produce different kinds of animal proteins, to make insulin or other kinds. And we specialize in egg proteins because they're super functional, and over 1 trillion eggs are consumed every single year worldwide. Massive market that's been completely, in many ways, underpenetrated. 99.8% of the egg market is still dominated by eggs. Only less than 0.2% isn't penetrated by anything that's not an egg. And so we see a huge opportunity there for us to help enable the broader food industry to transition to an animal-free future.
Thank you, Arturo. And Jasmin, tell me what you guys do.
Yeah, absolutely. So building on the opportunity that Arturo just spoke about, and we'll probably talk more about this in the coming minutes, huge opportunity in fueling the future of food by enabling better ingredients. So what we do at Shiru is actually look to the natural world, specifically non-animal proteins, so proteins that come from plants, fungi, cyanobacteria, to increase the options, the diversity of the protein ingredients that food formulators have at their fingertips. There are 400,000 known plant species. We currently get 90% of our calories from 13 staple crops. And so within each plant, there are 40,000 different proteins that are expressed. So the search space is huge. At Shiru, we use tools like machine learning coupled with precision fermentation to create a wide variety of different functional protein ingredients that can ultimately replace things like dairy proteins, egg proteins, gelatin, a wide number of different functional ingredients that we currently derive from animals in far less sustainable ways.
And on our left, or your right, on the far right, Ben Berman from Nomu. Now, Nomu is the name, and here's the joke behind Nomu. It is milk proteins and milk products without the cow, so that's why Nomu is probably the way I should have introduced him.
Yeah, thank you, and for the chuckles, I appreciate it.
Go ahead.
We're building a company called Nomu that's a joint venture with Perfect Day. And Perfect Day, similar to the companies that you already heard about, are doing precision fermentation on animal-free whey protein. The way I explain it is we feed the DNA sequence of cow's milk to yeast proteins and with them ferment like you would a beer or a loaf of bread. And at the end, we get a whey protein that is dairy identical, but it is animal-free, lactose-free. It is up to 97% fewer carbon emissions. And we are using that protein that Perfect Day has created to build out a beverage portfolio, an e-commerce company focused specifically on childhood nutrition. My background actually isn't in science. My background is in food. quite literally, my background is in cheeseburgers, ice cream sandwiches, and pizza, which are all 3 stories for another time.
Really healthy.
Very healthy, and also very heavy in dairy. And I approach this problem by saying, if I believe that the climate is the most urgent crisis that we are facing as a species, which I do, but I'm not sure that life is worth living without cheeseburgers, ice cream sandwiches, and pizza. How can we reinvent those foods by putting less strain on the planet, but not compromising on the foods that we get to enjoy? And so, along with Perfect Day, we are trying to reinvent those first few products: milk, childhood nutritional shakes, animal-free, lactose-free yogurt, products that we love and enjoy every day, but we want to try to put far less strain on the environment. We want to treat our bodies better. We want to rethink the ingredients that we're putting into our food to create a healthier, more sustainable food system.
Now, I think you guys here in the audience may be like, okay, milk without cows, eggs without chickens, hero proteins without plants, even growing these things, and you're thinking, is this really gonna ever happen, or is this just a whole bunch of pipe dream? Well, I'm here to tell you one thing. 7 years ago, when we backed Perfect Day, SOSV was the first backer of Perfect Day through our Indie Bio programs. We thought to the expression that Bill Gibson has, which is the future is already here. It's just not evenly distributed. And even if you see in this room, the future was not evenly distributed in this room. Like, there were only 2 people that knew about cellular agriculture who had ever had a meat that was grown completely, the same meat without a brain attached to it, like using like the Upside Foods kind of technology. And a few of you had the Perfect Day Sal milk products. So it's only 7 years later that hundreds of thousands of people, since our first investment in Perfect Day, we're now hundreds of thousands of people have used it and tasted that product. But in another 7 years, it will actually be billions of people. It's kind of like the iPhone, in 2008, it didn't exist and people didn't think they even needed it. But, it didn't take even 7 years for people to know that they needed it, and that's what's happening with the food industry. As these unstoppable trends continue, where you can produce milk for 4 times cheaper than a cow can produce milk, it pretty much undercuts the industry, and it makes it possible for everything to change in a way that we haven't seen, in the food industry yet, right? I mean, it's only starting to happen now. It's like when the microcomputers replaced, spreadsheets, that people did by hand. This is going to happen. It's an unstoppable force. And why don't you guys tell us a little bit about what are the things that are you all have raised different amounts of money. Actually, this is very interesting because we have a pre-seed company at the end. It's just raised $2 million. Shiru has just raised, Jasmin, remind me.
Our Series A was 17 million. 17
million, and on top of a couple, 3 or 4 million before that. And Arturo, what's your financing history? I'm not sure what you can say.
Yeah, we've raised 64 million. Then we're closing on a 120 round in a couple weeks.
Yeah, so the different lengths of time that these companies have been out there, and yet the products aren't yet in the market yet, so it may seem like nothing's happening, but in fact, it's happening at lightning speed. We're basically taking advantage of millions of years of evolution to produce natural products. Why don't you talk about what's happening next at your stage, Arturo? Clara.
Yeah, it's such a great question because, to your point, it's almost like it seems like nothing's happening and then it happens all at once.
Right.
And for context, it takes on average around 7 years to bring a product from synthetic biology to the market. We did ours in 5, which we launched it last year. It was the world's first animal-free pepsin, which is a pig protein made now using fermentation, but normally it used to come from hog stomachs. That was a really nice proof point for us. But what we've been really focusing on for the last 6 years is developing the core technology to enable the broader infrastructure. And a huge part of that is getting the technology right. But 2 is laying the groundwork for scale. And that's truly where, if we were a penny cheaper than many of these multi-billion-dollar commodity markets, you start owning these markets. And for us, the egg is a very affordable source of protein. So we need scale in addition to amazing technology to make that happen. And so over the last 2 years, we've been really working to lay the groundwork for scale. And what that means is that we partnered up with Ingredion, which is one of the world's largest ingredient companies in the world. They're in 120 countries, and that allows us to penetrate global markets far faster on the front end. And on the back end, we just closed a partnership with AB InBev BioBrew, which is the world's largest fermentation company. And that allows us, again, instead of using the fermenters...
AB InBev, you may or may not know, their beers are like Budweiser and
Corona.
And what's InBev is Heineken and all the other all those beers over in Europe as well. So it's a big fermenter, the world's largest fermentation company.
And so instead of using in addition to using the fermenters to use yeast and brew alcohol, why not use fermentation to also
have the yeast convert that sugar into protein and produce it at the lowest possible cost on a global level and make them accessible to everyone? And so we work with very large food companies like Grupo Bimbo, which is the world's largest bakery. They own Sara Lee, Entenmann's, Oro Wheat. And part of what these companies are doing is trying to transition away from eggs. But in order to, they reach people all over the world, especially in developing countries, where they need very, very affordable products. And that's really where then scale comes in to then penetrate these markets.
And I think scale is really a challenge for every company in this space, because initially the products start out being much more expensive than the products that are made by animals. And then it goes, say, like from $8,000 a pound for a hamburger to like 800 to 80 to 8. And, but it's happening at that level, at that speed as well. Over 2 or 3 years, you get that 10x cheaper. Jasmin, talk about what types of proteins that you're looking to bring to market and what scale you're looking to achieve.
Sure. Yeah. So on the panel, I think you have companies at different parts of the value chain also, which is really interesting. We are very early up in the value chain. So Shiru has a differentiated technology platform where we do protein discovery, essentially. And so what that means is we can leverage our database, which currently contains 16.5 million natural protein sequences, interrogate it using tools like machine learning and bioinformatics, and say, we're looking for proteins that have gelation capability or emulsification or foaming, these textural properties that really define how we as consumers experience food, but also thinking about allergenicity, toxicity, amino acid profile, and basically predict the proteins that are going to perform those jobs in the best ways.
And that's kind of those functional proteins, those functional capabilities really matter when you take, for example, like you take like a soy milk or something and you try to put it in with eggs, or you try to use it to cook something. It actually, that's why the cakes don't turn out when you're using stuff that doesn't have those functional properties, and you're trying to substitute milk for those things because they don't have, say, the whey proteins or the casein proteins that are necessary for all those different functional properties.
Right.
So you're going specifically after those functional properties to either replace existing,
yes,
or to
better
add
products.
new capabilities to food.
Exactly. Yeah. And I would add to that, the other element here, as Arturo commented on, is scalability. And so not all proteins are equally as able to be expressed or produced in high quantities and efficient manners. So we also prioritize for ingredients that actually have the best potential to be scaled at the lowest cost point, essentially.
Right. And Ben, your area, actually, the other thing I just realized is that you're selling direct to ingredients companies using your products directly for all of their products. Ben, you're going direct to consumer, and in the middle, Jasmin, you're going to the more towards the ingredient side, or are you going to have any consumer packaged goods?
No consumer packaged goods. We will provide to food CPG companies as well as ingredients companies.
Right. So inside of the industry, there's a number of companies that go direct to consumer, and Ben, you're one of them. Tell us about the challenges involved there.
Yeah, so we deal at the opposite end of what Jasmin is thinking about. And so what I'm thinking about every day is, if every time someone entered a grocery store or went to check out of their groceries online, I could have them listen to 30 minutes with Jasmin and Arturo and Sean, that would be really excellent because my job would be a lot easier. We don't have that ability. So a lot of my job these days is thinking about how we can get folks to understand what animal-free dairy really means, how they can understand that oxymoron of a product that they're hopefully going to put into their bodies. And I need consumers to understand that this is urgent and that this is delicious. And that's what we think about every day, is we want to rethink those products. We want to understand how those products can be branded. We think a lot about the fulfillment work behind those products. We're trying to get to scale so that it's not just folks who are at the SALT conference who have access to these products. We want these to be everyday things that are in every person's refrigerator, that are in every children's lunchbox, because we believe that's important for our planet and for our children.
I think one of the things that confuses people a lot is, is this like a GMO, right? Is this something that we're going to try as an experiment? But in fact, all these products are already, a lot of them at least. I know we're doing some things which are more advanced, but GRAS products, generally regarded as safe products by it's a sort of an FDA clarification. So once you get it out there, it's exactly the same as a cow makes it. It's exactly, it's not a special thing. It's what humans have been consuming for hundreds of thousands of years. So it's just a different means of production without requiring the animal to produce it. And it's a natural means of production. It's using nature, the incredible forces of nature, cellular agriculture, as the machines that are actually producing these outputs.
Can I add one thing?
Yeah, please.
So, one question that I always get is like, why? Why are you even using this kind of very deep technology to make milk proteins, plant proteins, and egg proteins and animal proteins more broadly, instead of eating more fruits and vegetables? Or aren't the veggie burgers of today good enough? And ultimately, the way that I talk about it is, the plant-based companies of today, I think, have done such a great job educating the market, right? Getting people excited about these kinds of products and knowing and sharing that it is possible to get a really tasty, sustainable product, and that you don't have to compromise anymore as a consumer. But ultimately, cost and taste still dictate the vast majority of consumer purchasing, not just in the US, but globally. And so ultimately, how do we get people who don't care about climate change, right? Who don't care about animal rights, who don't care about don't make purchasing decisions based off of that, to transition? And ultimately, for us, the big question is, how do we deliver products that deliver on that promise of taste and price? And for us, this technology really is critical to enabling that transition. Like, to get a cake to rise and give you the same mouthfeel as a consumer, the angel food cake that you get every Christmas with your family. How do we recreate those experiences in a way that doesn't require animal products, and that ultimately can enable a more delicious and affordable future for people? And really, this technology, at least the way that I see it from the research that we've done in the space, is it's really the only way to make this transition possible.
What do you guys think? And I'll start with you, Jasmin. I always, my belief is that there will always be some luxury market for the want to buy animal based protein products, the steak directly from a slaughtered cow. But at some point, it's going to vastly be these new food technologies, not just for the global warming reasons, but just for economic reasons. It's just going to be so incredibly compelling. When do you think we're going to actually change, so let's say 90% of the protein that people eat, instead of coming from animals, is coming from these new methods.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there are predictions out there that say as early as 2035 that those balances will tip in favor of proteins that are produced more sustainably and without animals. Of course, if you're looking to have, a steak and go out to celebrate something, that's an experience, right? If you're reaching for a bag of Doritos, that's probably not because you really particularly want to consume dairy protein. It's just to eat some Doritos. But if you think about the quantities that global food manufacturers use, these functional ingredients, because they perform a job, that is so easy for us to replace. That is low-hanging fruit. And the scale and the volume of that opportunity is tremendous.
Well,
for
it's
companies
trillions
like
of
ours.
dollars every year.
Absolutely.
And that's that reinvention of the entire food processing industry. Ben, I'll throw this to you. You're saying not move free, you're saying no move, right?
Yeah.
What about all the farmers? What
Yeah.
about the fact that these industries are going to be completely, I look back, I live in Princeton, New Jersey, and there's a canal that runs along the town. And that canal only lasted like 20 or 30 years before the trains overtook it. And then the trains were overtaken by the interstate highways. And there's so much, money that's been poured into these massive animal agriculture, industrial, these miles big plants. What do you think about, what happens with the jobs and what happens with the ethical issues there? Do you have any thoughts on that?
I do. It's something that we think about a lot. And one thing that I had the opportunity to do over the last few months was talk to consumers who were showing purchasing intent for our product. And one thing that I very much learned from that is that the enemy for us is actually not farmers. It is big dairy in general. And it is the things that have happened to our food system in order to feed the number of people with the demand that we have. And so we're oversimplifying here, but we think about this. We say, if you are going down the road to your local farmer to get your milk, we actually love that. And we would like you to continue doing that because we think that's awesome. Where we want to play is big dairy. That's the enemy here, is the unsustainable ways that we have grown our food systems in order to feed everyone.
And all the repercussions of
That's right.
antibiotic resistance and everything else is
That's right.
endangering our lives. Well, I think we may have time for one question. If anyone has anything you want to sort of shout out, I can. Yes, go ahead, front row. Yeah.
Business model in terms of what your cost is and what you're looking.
Yeah.
In terms of what the next 3 to 5 years.
Wow, that's a lot, and we'll go as quickly as we can. So the timeframes for each of these different industries, whether it's plant-based foods like Beyond Meat, or these hero proteins, which I call protein farming, like these functional ingredients, like what we're talking about with eggs and milk and whatnot. Those are different, different timeframes. It's like the explosive sort of investment and growth, but you'll see more like the Beyond Meat Impossible Burger sort of stuff in the market quicker, but they will eventually be supplanted and replaced with the next generations of these hybrid products, and then the cellular agriculture will come next, sort of in waves. So there's different timeframes on each, and then these companies, if you're interested in the very earliest stages, then you go to a program like an IndieBio, which is what we run, and there's a lot of great companies that are coming through that to try to get into the early stages, or you could get in at Series A, Series B, Series C, right here on stage. Just find these investors. There's a lot of people talking about this market. I'm not sure if that really answered your question, but go ahead. Anything else?
For us specifically, so eggs hover around $2 to $3 a pound in terms of liquid eggs. With our technology, based on without any improvements in our technology today, and dropped into large scale fermenters, our cost is between $1 to $2 a pound. So we now have proven that at scale, the technology works. And ultimately now the Series C that we're raising is to really drive adoption across the portfolio with our customers.
Do you want to?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I'll comment on the business model side of things. So, for our company, our North Star, our business is going to be in commercializing and selling ingredients to food CPG companies, large and small, all over the world. That's obviously a long time frame, and to get there, you need to raise a lot of capital to be able to reach those markets. Given the technology platform that we have at our core, we're also going to take advantage of opportunities to license technologies or ingredients to ingredients companies as we reach that North Star of selling our own ingredients.
And I think we've run out of time. Ben, do you want to?
It can go super short.
Yeah, go super short.
I believe you'll be able to buy our first product, which is animal-free milk, by Q2 of next year, and I believe we'll get to pretty close to price parity with milk alternatives that you're familiar with.
Yeah. Well, if anyone has any direct questions, I think you guys will hang around or maybe go out. I guess I don't know if we have to go outside or if there's something directly after, but we'll go outside and be available for your questions. Thanks so much for your time today.